Okay, today we are looking at the topic, I am the door, finding our way into the presence. And as I said last week, I asked my friend, really our friend, because she is one of our audience members in Johannesburg, South Africa, ask her if there was anything she would like to, any topics she would like me to talk about. And she sent me a list of 10 things. So that was a good thing, and I really appreciate her. Lasagna is her name. She's a delightful person to know and just a lot of fun to communicate with, mainly via email. But it's, and I like all the subjects she asked about. Sometimes I get a little bit dry about what to talk about because you do this all the time and, you think you've said it all. Well, yeah, I have said it all probably, but it doesn't hurt to say it all again. There's just a handful of principles that we really look at, and really 3 principles that there's different ways to think of each one. But we look at the nature of God, how we view that. We look at the nature of ourselves, how we view that, the individual soul. And we look at the nature of the relationship that we as individuals have with God. And everything kind of revolves around that. It determines how we define prayer, meditation, how we think of the Bible, how we think of Jesus, how we think of every subject that we have. So today we're looking at I am the door. This comes from the Gospel of John. In the Gospel of John, we find Jesus saying, I am the door. The mainstream Christian theology teaches that accepting Jesus as Lord and Savior is the only way to God. But that's the idea, and that's the idea that comes through John as well, and I want to talk about that. There's a book called The Five Gospels, and I would highly recommend it to anyone that's interested in critical scholarship. And critical scholarship is not normal religious scholarship. It is comes more from an academic or scientific basis. And it looks to explore the words of Jesus. This particular book was in search of the authentic historical Jesus. And it started out with about 75 scholars, and these are all highly credentialed individuals from all religious denominations. It's not just, one or the other. It's quite a mix. But they came to the conclusion on the Gospel of John. They say, the words attributed to Jesus in the 4th Gospel are the creation of the evangelist, and that's the author, for the most part, and reflect the developed language of John's Christian community. So what they're saying is that when you read the Gospel of John and the words that are attributed to Jesus are probably the creation of the Gospel writer himself. And that's kind of a shocking statement to most of us. But what you find is very interesting if you've ever seen a harmony of Gospels. That's where all 4 Gospels are put together side by side. John doesn't match, but very few of the sayings attributed or the stories attributed to Jesus. It's a completely different type of presentation. From about the 2nd century, it was known as the spiritual gospel. It takes a very different approach to the person of Jesus, and even puts historically some of the events that the other 3 Gospels record, like the turning over of the tables, for example. John puts that in the very beginning of Jesus' ministry, where Matthew, Mark, and Luke put it at the very end, after he enters Jerusalem on the colt. And so there's some discrepancies or some differences that are pointed out. Some religious scholars will say, well, he did it twice. And I don't think Jesus would have got away twice with turning tables over in the temple. That was a serious crime, an offense that would have been not gone unnoticed. But another way to explain it is it comes from two different sources. They had access to that story. All four writers had access to the story, but they used it differently. So what the Jesus Seminar ended up saying is, in the judgment of many scholars, the Gospel of John, was produced by a school of disciples, probably in Syria. Not written by a person, but by a school of disciples. So that gives us a whole different perception of what we're reading when we read the Gospel of John. And I'm going to invoke the F word here, and I'm not going to shock you too bad. The F word is fiction. It is not what you're thinking. I know how you guys think. I know it's, I'm trying to educate you. Fiction is, I read an article the other day that there were two groups that were fighting because one group, which is considered by the other as heretical, said the Bible is fiction. Well, the group that said there's fiction in the Bible was not saying the Bible is a lie. When we think of saying something is fiction, we think it's not true. It's a lie. So when we think of, say, like the Gospel of John is written, it's pretty much made up or pretty much presented by a group of disciples rather than John the disciple, as has been believed for many years, that we would think that fiction is a lie. But when you read the Gospel of John, you will find more truth in this gospel. It's easier to find than any of the others. So when we think of fiction, don't think of a lie. Think of a vehicle that is used to tell the truth. And that's done all the time. You know, when you saw The Wizard of Oz growing up, I don't know if, I'm sure all of you did, because we all grew up with it. I couldn't wait each year to watch that show. But what's interesting about it, like we all knew it was fiction, but it carries a lot of truth. It carries a lot of the truth that we teach here. That is, you close your eyes and you affirm there's no place like home. You click your ruby slippers together and you end up home. You know, it's not something far off. And you've got this wizard that's behind the curtain running the show, you know, trying to convince everybody that that's reality out there, that you've got to follow this yellow brick road and get home. Well, we are that yellow brick road. But I didn't think of any of that as a kid. I just saw the fiction and I was totally captivated by flying monkeys and wicked witches and all of the things that made up that story. But there's a lot of truth in that. And so the value of it, you know, to say it's a fictionalized story, which obviously it is, especially when you go back today as an adult and look at it and you can see the staging and all the all the special effects, which there aren't too many. I think the only one is when they land in Oz, it goes from black and white to color. And I don't think we even had a color TV when we first saw it. But it's obviously fiction, but there is still truth in it, and it doesn't minimize that. That this yellow brick road we think we have to follow to get to the land of Oz, get to the end of the rainbow and all of that stuff that we have come to believe that it's a lot closer than we think. So when I first read this kind of thing about the Gospel of John, I thought it felt demeaning to the work. But now I don't think that at all. It has no bearing on whether or not it conveys truth. And to me, it doesn't matter if Jesus said something or if 10 disciples said it. If it's true, it's true. What difference does it make what the source is? We have this need to confirm that what we believe is true by quoting an expert. And that's, there's nothing wrong with that either. But why do we think it's true? Why does it seem true to us? And the reason it is true to us is because we get to the point in ourselves where we know that truth. Jesus didn't say you'll know the truth of somebody else and that truth will set you free. That's what religion is all about, mainstream religion. It's a presentation of ideas that have been passed down for centuries. And so we say, yes, I'm a believer. I believe everything I've been told. But have I ever experienced the presence of God? Have I ever closed my eyes, said there's no place like home, and found that I was there? You know, have I ever had that experience? That's what this is all about. We want the experience. So when we look at any aspect of the Bible, and the Jesus Seminar, by the way, they go through all 4 of the Gospels, and they point out what they think can be traced back to Jesus, the historical Jesus, and there's quite a bit. You know, there's quite a bit of information or sayings that they trace back, so they don't just discount it all, and they don't discount John either. It's just, what's the source of it? That's all they're really asking. And did Jesus say this? When I read the Gospel of John, what I read is this something a mystic would say? Is this something that a person who is aware of the presence of God, is this something they would say? And so much of John, the answer would be yes. Was that person Jesus? Does it matter? It's still truth. And so we need to sort that out. You know, we need to approach this whole thing as adults. And I have a lot of respect for the Bible, but I have an understanding of what I think Jesus taught, and that was, go within yourself. The kingdom doesn't come through observation. They won't say it's low here, low there. The kingdom of God is within you. So what does that mean? It means something very profound, because he devoted his whole life to teaching it. And I do believe that. And I believe that we're all capable, and John says, the things I do, you can do also, and greater things. He has Jesus say that. I believe that. I don't care who said it, but I do believe that the things Jesus did, you and I can do as well, and greater things. I think that is a truth. And I don't care if a group of disciples said it or Jesus, the man himself, said it. So in truth, God is accessible to all, regardless of their religious orientation. John is using the voice of Jesus to lend credibility to the teachings of the church. If you will look up, type in the question, can a non-Christian be saved? You'll find there's a lot of workarounds to this idea, but it is always in the sense that God is so forgiving, so loving, that even if we err, so they're calling an error if we don't accept mainstream Christianity. Jesus was not a Christian. You know that, don't you? He was a Jew, and he was a first century Jew, never heard of Christianity, nothing like that. Nothing like the Christian message existed at that time. That came later. And Paul was really the one that reached out to people like us, Gentiles. We're not Jews. But the Jewish community themselves did not accept that Jesus was the Messiah, did not believe that at all. And so that's what caused the split between Judaism and Christianity. Okay. So what I was saying is this idea that you must be Christian to be saved, that implies something. It implies that you think you may not be saved. It implies you think that you could go to hell. That is, again, a Christian belief. It's also a Jewish belief. It's also a Muslim belief. It's held by a lot of folks that there's that possibility. What if you realize there is no hell that you will go to when you die? You know, then it takes all of that away. What if you realize that's a teaching you've been given, but have not yourself thought through to the point where you can free yourself of that? Then you could say, it doesn't matter if I declare myself Christian or not. I believe in God. I believe that I am an expression of God. I believe that my soul is a complete expression of God, and that my work is to awaken to that inner presence, awaken to my soul. That's where salvation lies. And so we're looking at the difference between the teaching of an organization that says you've got to join to make it. Well, you don't. You don't have to join to make it. There are so many people on this planet that will never be Christian. But I have no doubt that they will experience a beautiful life when they leave this plane. That the stuff that we have been taught, we need to think beyond that in order to understand the truth that will truly set us free. And I think most of us here have, or we wouldn't be here. When I read John, I have found it helpful to think of his voice of Jesus as the voice of my own soul. When he says, I am the door, for example, or I am the way, I read this as my soul, my spiritual essence, as being that door, that way. Our spiritual essence is our only way to God. So the kingdom of God is within you. You know, what does that mean? We repeat that all the time here because there aren't that many statements that Jesus made that are that clear, statements attributed to Jesus that are that direct. But what could that possibly mean, the kingdom of God being within you? What is within you? What is that withinness? Where is the soul? You know, where is the connection that we have with God? Is it us looking up into the sky? Mainstream religion says it's the Bible. The Bible's our connection with God. Jesus said you can search the scriptures because in them you think you find life, and they do bear witness to me. But you got to come to me. And what's the me that we have to come to? It's the soul. Self-discovery, you've got to open your spiritual eyes to the reality of your being, what's true of you at the deepest level. And when I read saying or statements from Jesus, especially in John, if I think of it as that's not a man speaking, that is my soul, my Christ level of consciousness, my spiritual level speaking, then it begins to make sense. He says to the woman at the well that God is spirit. When we generally think of God, we think of God as an old man up in the sky. It's an old picture. We've got a lot of paintings of God. Very muscular, white-haired, but which indicates wisdom to run the universe. But how do we reconcile that with the idea of God as spirit? When I think of spirit, spirit is connected to the wind, to the breath of the Almighty. Comes, as I have said, from the Greek word pneuma. We have pneumatic air guns. We have, it's all related to air. But when we say God is spirit, we've got to think in a different way. We don't think of an old man in the sky. We think of energy. We think of creative life force. We think of something that can be involved in us and is involved in us now. Each one of us is a living mystery. How do we get up, walk around, think, do the things we do without batteries or without remote controls? It's really a miracle. We're living beings that are thinking and making decisions and doing things on our own. And it's like, if that doesn't tell us that the presence of God is here, what would? That would be like looking at the tree and seeing the leaves and the branches move. You don't see the wind, but you see the effect of it. We are the effect of the Spirit. And we are proof that it is here. And we are proof that it is within us. If it was not within us, we would not exist. We couldn't exist. So it's already here. And this is how we have to think if we are to stop following that yellow brick road, close our eyes, and start affirming there's no place like home, and it's right here. It's here now, in this now moment. So when Jesus says, I am the door, don't think of a man saying that. Think of your soul saying, I am the door, I am the way, I am the truth, the life. All that you seek is in me. When Jesus says, my sheep hear my voice, the sheep represent that part of us that recognizes the genuine inspiration that rises from the depth of our being. It begins as a still small voice, but becomes more pronounced as we learn to listen and know. That's why I have emphasized so often what got you off of the mainstream superhighway. How many of you think took the off-ramp of the mainstream superhighway? Most of us. I know I did. I didn't know I was doing it. But why would we do something like that? It's just it's not natural. I mean, it's not normal, I should say. If it was normal, everybody would do it. It is natural. There's something in us that's rising up. It's not our brain speaking. It is something deep within us. And that something deep within us is saying, I am the way. You may not know where this off-ramp takes you, but take it. You'll figure it out. It'll open up to you. It's like riding the bicycle. You don't know how to balance it until you're moving. Have you ever tried to sit on a bicycle and keep it upright without moving? Can't do it. Oh, some people can. I shouldn't say can't be done. People who have nothing better to do than live their life, they get good at it. But when we're moving, we don't always know where we're going, but we know that we don't want to go back. We know that we cannot go back. You know, there's no way I could ever get back up on that superhighway. It just doesn't fit anymore, and it's not a condemnation or criticism toward anyone or anything. It's just that I'm on this planet to let my light shine, and to let my light shine, I've got to understand what it is. I've got to listen to it. I've got to know what that is speaking to me. And if I'm getting it through a church, if I'm getting it through a Bible, if I'm getting it through evangelists, any source outside of myself, that's not what I'm listening to. I was listening to that on the superhighway. That's where that voice is. It's all those big green signs that, well marked how far it is to the next exit and all of the things that we're familiar with. But when Jesus says, my sheep hear my voice, this is a really good metaphor. He's saying when a shepherd goes into what the shepherds would do, they'd come together and put all their sheep in a corral, and there'd be several flocks. Several owners would have their sheep there. And when it was time for the shepherd to move on, he would call the sheep, and the sheep would recognize his voice, and they would come out. And so I have always equated that with, what is that voice that called us off the superhighway? That's our shepherd. It's not Jesus, the man, though Jesus may have said that. That's perfectly legitimate. But I'm talking about the real thing that made us exit the superhighway. And it would be a still small voice, but a very persistent one, or we would not continue to listen to it. Because we've all taken exits. We've all gone down roads that we didn't end up staying on. We've all explored ideas. We've all looked, this direction, that direction. I've lost track of how many things, in the ministry, there's always something popping up, and we'd have conferences in our national organization, and we'd have guest speakers that had the latest, greatest books that were out, and everybody would flock to them, and say how wonderful all that was, and that would last about a year, and then we'd have next year's speaker, and we'd all do the same thing again. And I caught on to that fairly fast because I started realizing that these guest speakers weren't saying anything that we didn't already know, that we weren't already teaching. And yet I was kind of dumbfounded by all the ministers sitting around going, ooh and ah, about this great revelation. People learn to say things in a slightly different way, and it sounds like it's something new. But when it comes down to it, the bottom line is God is everywhere present. We're in it. And we're either listening to it, feeling it intuitively, or we're not. And if we're not, we're going to be following direction, whatever comes up, whatever the newest, latest, greatest thing is. The door is a powerful metaphor. The front door of your house opens to the interior of your home, and it also opens to the limitless outdoors. So there is a door in each one of us. And I like to think of it as intuition. That's not an easy thing to describe, to define, because what we're implying here is the intuition, the spiritual faculty opens up to this inner presence. It's like we stand on the shore of the ocean. It opens to the ocean. You turn around and you see the land that we're all familiar with. So how do you turn yourself, your intuition, how do you open it up to the ocean? How do you turn it in that direction? That's a very challenging thing to answer, but we're all doing it. It's a very natural thing. That's why we're sitting here. That's why we're here in a place like this. This is why we read these kinds of books. This is why we exited the mainstream superhighway. We have listened to that. We have opened our door, front door, and we're looking out into the vast possibility. We still live in the house, of course. That's okay. But that door opens to two things. It opens to the life that we have, and we understand the daily experience that we are all involved in, but it also opens to something incredible. It opens to the source of our being, the source of our soul. And that's the door I think Jesus was referring to, or John was referring to. And I also like this one. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in to him and eat with him, and he with me. In this case, the soul is the door. It's there's a knocking. What is that knocking? It's that level of dissatisfaction. There's something more to life than I'm getting. And we start asking, what is that more? What is that something? And we've all asked that, and we have stepped into a level of experience that we would not have had otherwise. We've stepped into a level of teaching that we would not have had otherwise. Because we would, like the majority of people on this planet, stay on the mainstream highway, superhighway. But we've taken the road less traveled. We've taken another way. We have responded to that door, that knocking on the door. We have opened the door. And what have we let in? It's not the man Jesus, it's us. It's a deeper level of our being. It's a soul. It's an awareness of who and what we are at the deepest level. In this case, Jesus is not portrayed as the door, but the one who's knocking and would like to come in. The knocking we hear or actually feel is our natural urge to open our mind to greater possibilities of being. This is an intuitive knowing, very natural, but not widely understood. Jesus did talk about thieves and robbers. He said that there are thieves and robbers that will try to steal your sheep, meaning there are all kinds of distractions that can take us down paths that lead nowhere. And those are healthy once in a while, to get on a path that we believe in wholeheartedly and then find that it's not what we thought. I've been down a lot of those. I'm sure you have too. You learn something every time you do that. and that's a good thing. We want our sheep to find rich pasture or open the door to true spiritual nourishment. That's what we are after. And we can get into teachings that they act in a sense like thieves and robbers. They distract our attention. But again, nothing will destroy your soul. Nothing will take away that which you are at the deepest level. There are sometimes detours, but that's okay if we learn something from that detour, and we always do. Every step we've taken has brought us here, to this place, to this point. And I don't mean physically here. I'm talking about where we are in our understanding, what would open our minds to something different. When we begin to understand our oneness with God, then it becomes clear that the door to God is within us. It has been said that if God was going to hide the answer to life, the best place to hide it would be within ourselves. And that's really what's happened. It's not hidden. It's there. We've just been taught to think it's out there someplace and that we're able to get it someplace else. Jesus is the messenger, the spiritual teacher, the good shepherd, encouraging us to develop an understanding of the guiding promptings that bring us into firsthand knowledge of our unity with the infinite. So I like to think of him in that way. And that's what I'm doing with my current book, is going back at looking at the teachings of Jesus and pulling out this perspective that which we are looking for is within us. It is us. That's what he came to represent or came to teach. And it wasn't well received. Just like today, it's not well received. The majority of people don't get it.
Thank you for watching this week's program. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with others. We want to reach as many people as we can, and we appreciate your help. If you'd like to help support this ministry, just click the donate card at the top right-hand corner of your screen. Your financial support means a lot to us. We have many subjects in our video lineup, so feel free to take a look. If there's a topic you don't see and would like me to address, just put it in the comment section. I'd love to know what's on your mind. To subscribe to this channel, simply click our logo. Thanks again for your interest in independent unity, and have a wonderful week.